In the last couple movies, we looked at how we could go about creating basic shapes, like squares, rectangles, circles. Those were all closed path shapes, in the sense that the path that created those shapes were complete and they had an interior space that we could color with a fill color. Well, in this movie, I want to begin to introduce the open path drawing tools. Obviously, open paths is a different way of creating artwork, but certainly one that gives you a lot more flexibility. You're not limited to just a shape. So let's come over and choose the line tool inside the tools panel. If you click and hold down, you can see that there's several different tools hidden underneath it. What you can do is go ahead and create a tear-off by selecting this little button over here on the right-hand side. By the way, when you create a tear-off, it's just a temporary free-floating panel. If you close it, there's no adverse effects in the tools panel. You just lose that panel, and you can recreate it simply enough by selecting that same button. So the line segment tool uses stroke attributes, and it's pretty easy to use. You just click and drag, and there you go. You can hold down the Shift key, you'll constrain it to 45-degree increments. If you hold down the space bar, you can move it anywhere that you want. And of course, if you just click once, you can specify the length of the line and the angle, and you can also fill the line. So there's some options when you just click. I'll go ahead and cancel out of that. The other tool is the arc tool, which is like the line segment tool, except it has an arc. If you go ahead and click and drag, you can see the arc. And of course, there are some keyboard shortcuts available for manipulating this arc. First of all, if you press the F key, you'll flip it. Then you can increase or decrease the radius by using the up arrow key on your keyboard or the down arrow key on your keyboard. So there you go. That's an arc. Now, these tools are generally used to begin drawings for different types of shapes that you're trying to create. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these two line segments and arcs that I created. Just get rid of them. Then I'm going to come over and choose the spiral tool. And the spiral tool is pretty useful, believe it or not. When you first look at it, you think the only thing that you could really do with it is create a spiral. But again, it's a great starting point for different types of artwork that you're trying to create. Nevertheless, if you click and drag, you can create a spiral. If you hold down the Command key or the Control key on Windows, you'll tighten or loosen that spiral up a little bit. And you can increase or decrease the line segment associated with the spiral by using the up arrow key on the keyboard or the down arrow key on the keyboard. Again, because we're working with these open path tools, they're all being styled by stroke attributes. The next couple tools that I want to show you are pretty unique and can be used for specific applications, but they still have uses. First of all, we want to take a look at the rectangular grid tool, and it's just that. It creates a rectangular grid. And this can be helpful if you're trying to simulate graph paper or something along those lines. Of course, this tool has keyboard shortcuts associated with it. The up arrow key will increase the number of rows. The down arrow key will decrease the number of rows. The right arrow key will increase the number of columns. The left arrow key will decrease the number of columns. So there's quite a few options there. Additionally, there's some interesting keyboard shortcuts. If you press the F key on the keyboard, you begin to skew it, making the top cells taller. If you press the C key on the keyboard, you'll make the left cells larger. If you press the V key on the keyboard, you'll make the bottom cells larger. And if you press the X key on the keyboard, you'll make the right cells larger. So there you go. And this can be useful for creating background patterns, whatever the case may be. It's not something that you'll use all that often, but certainly it does become helpful if you have to create something like this. And then, of course, we have the last tool here, which is the polar grid tool, which is a circular version of the rectangular grid tool, and it has all the same keyboard shortcuts. So if you click and drag, you'll create the grid. And again, same keyboard shortcuts. If you use the up arrow key on your keyboard, you add more rings. If you hold down the down key on your keyboard, the down arrow key, you reduce the number of rings. The right arrow key will increase the segments, and the left arrow key will decrease those segments. And then you have those skewing options of F, C, V, and X. So very specific, these two tools can become useful if you have an application that would require them. Otherwise, the first three tools are tools that you'll use fairly often when drawing inside the program to begin shapes and other types of drawings.